Let's be seated.
Good morning, church. If your vision's not very good and your hearing's not very good, I'm Jerry Savage. I'm actually Jay. I'm Jerry's brother, and I'm visiting here from St. John, and I'm glad to be here. I've been told by a few outside that I should probably spend this time just telling stories about Jerry, just to get even for all the stories he's told about me. But I know this is being recorded, so I better be nice about it. I'm glad to be here today, and in keeping with your theme about rescuing, I wanted to just tell a story about a time when Carrie and I needed rescuing. And Tommy Panter did not tell me to make it short. So if I go long, I guess it's Tommy's fault. But Jerry's at Black Hills Bible Camp this week, by the way, with a group of people from here. And we're definitely praying for the success of that ministry. And we know it's really, if you haven't been, Black Hills Bible Camp is a great ministry. So anyway, I have the clicker here. I hope it works, but that's a picture of Carrie and me on our boat. We lived on that boat for 2 years while we're building our house. And Carrie will probably testify, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. If you've lived in a trailer or a camper or a boat, you'd know what I'm talking about. But it was confined quarters, and it was wonderful and awful at the same time. But we really did enjoy it. The story that I want to tell you today has to do about a trip. And in keeping with your theme of rescue, we normally stay in the boat year-round, but during hurricane season, so the thickest of it, August, September, October, we put the boat out in storage, and then we rent a place for 3 months because we know the hurricanes can be terrible out there, and we don't want to be in the boat. And so it came the end of hurricane season, and Carrie and I took a ferry over to Virgin Gorda, another island where we stored the boat, to bring the boat back. Well, it was a beautiful day, and we got on board the boat. We didn't get to provision because the chandlery there was not open at the time. But we went ahead and hopped in the boat. We didn't have a lifeboat with us because we had left it back on another island in St. John. But we headed out on our journey. We cranked, the sails were in the bags. It wasn't ready to sail, but we headed out for our 4-hour journey. The first hour, I sounded like Gilligan just then, didn't I? It was a 3-hour tour is what it started out to be. We headed out on our journey. And it's a 4-hour journey. The first hour was just fine. We motored along. We were doing great. And an hour into it, the motor just started puttering. And it started and stop, start and stop, start and stop. And there's something wrong with the motor. And I couldn't tell what it was, but then the motor just died. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? So Carrie and I were thinking about it. We were like, wait a minute. This is a sailboat. We'll just raise the sails and sail back to St. John. So this is a picture of me getting out and getting up, climbing up the mast to take off the sail bags and to open the sails and hook up the halyard and raise the sail. So that was our goal. And you know what? It worked. We were catching the wind and we were sailing and doing really great. About 5 knots, about good speed. And so the next picture is after we've taken the sails up, and I'm sorry about your feet being in that picture, Carrie, but there's Carrie sitting on the deck of the boat enjoying our sail back. Now we sailed for about an hour, and we're getting close to the straits between the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands, and all of a sudden that wind just stopped. Now the motor doesn't work. The wind is not blowing, and we have no lifeboat. And if that weren't bad enough, there are currents in that slot, and the currents were taking us towards what's called Johnson's Reef. Now, you don't know Johnson's Reef, but it goes from 120 feet deep to 4 feet deep really fast in the middle of this channel. And a lot of boats have run aground and even sank at Johnson's Reef. And the currents were taking us towards Johnson's Reef. And we couldn't drop anchor, the water was too deep. And we thought to ourselves, my goodness, we don't have a motor, we don't have wind for the sails, and we're going into the reef. What do we do? And I thought, well, aside from effectual and fervent prayer, what we need to do next is call somebody. So we called a friend of ours that lived in St. Thomas, Mike McKay. We worship at a congregation that's about 100 members, and it's a great congregation in St. Thomas. And Mike was one of the members, and he picked up the phone, and he said, how can I help you, Jay? And I said, we are headed towards Johnson's Reef, and we're in trouble. Can you bring your boat out so we can tie on and save us from running into Johnson's Reef? He said, absolutely, I can. I need to go get the boat. I need to fill it up with gas, and then I'm headed your way. And I thought, okay, that's great. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how much time do we have, right? So then we continued in prayer. You know, we were praying for a rescue. We were praying for wind. And we looked on the horizon about 10 minutes later. We looked on the horizon, and there was a massive cloud billowing. And I'm guessing by that time, the reason it was so calm was because that was the calm before the storm. This massive cloud started billowing up, and I could see the ripples. Have you seen a lake where you know the wind is coming because you know the water's starting to ripple? These were like waves coming in the deep ocean, and I knew it was coming. So I told Carrie, I'm like, let's take the sails down to half. We'll take the mainsail down, and then we'll take the jib down half, because when that wind hits, it could do some serious damage if we don't have it just right. And sure enough, just a few minutes later, this gust of 30-mile-an-hour wind hits us. And I mean, that boat went from 0 to 9 knots in an instant, and the boat just heeled over. It was crazy. And so we were sailing now at about 9 knots. What we didn't realize when we were praying for wind, what we didn't realize is that with the wind comes massive amounts of rain. I mean, it was raining hard, and the boat was heeled. Not only could we not see where the land was, we couldn't see if there were boats in front of us. We couldn't see Johnson's Reef, and it was hard. I sent Carrie to the front of the boat to just see what she could see, but it was hard for me to see Carrie, and we're traveling at 9 knots. Fortunately, I had a GPS system on the boat, and the battery worked. And the chart plotter shows you exactly, you fishermen know this, it shows you right where your boat is, and it shows you where the land is, and it'll show you where Johnson's Reef is. And so we're sailing at 9 knots on a tilt, and I'm guiding the boat in around. I could see we successfully made it around Johnson's Reef, and now we're to the island of St. John. It's still pouring rain, and I decided that I would take it into a cove. And this cove has some anchors that come up to mooring balls, about probably 10 or 12 of them. And so I'm looking on the map, I'm steering, I'm trying to get it into the safety of the harbor amidst the strong wind and the rain. And as we approach the harbor on the GPS, the rain lets up a little bit, and Carrie gets the hook because it's her responsibility to grab that hook. And what y'all don't know is we've never sailed onto a mooring ball before. We've always had a motor. And so you can go forward or backward or do what you want and get on that mooring, that anchor. We've never done that before. And so here we come, screaming into that bay. I have the jib in one hand, the sail in one hand. Carrie's got the boat hook. And I try to the best of my ability to turn the boat into the wind, to let go of the sail, And I'm praying that Carrie catches that, because if she doesn't, we're in trouble. And to my dismay, Carrie is not grabbing the mooring ball. She's just looking. And the boat stopped. The boat actually stopped in that strong wind. And I'm like, Carrie, grab the mooring ball. And she goes, it's okay. It's right here. And I was so excited. I was like, yeah, yay. Yay, we did it. I don't know why I'm getting emotional. This is crazy. What was funny was she grabbed it and tied us on, and I knew we were safe. And there was another sailboat that was in the bay with us. Carrie and I were jumping around and clapping and hugging, and they started clapping, which made me laugh, because I'm like, they don't know that we don't know what we're doing. And so we were safe on the anchor. And I share that story because I know Jesus taught in parables, and I think it's important for us to sort of glean some things from the lessons that we've learned in life. And I want to share with you 4 things that I think we did that taught me a valuable lesson. And then you can apply that to your life and see if maybe this could be helpful to you in the way you apply this to your life. The first thing that I want to say is that in the keeping with your theme, there are going to be struggles that come your way. I think Mario did a great job of addressing that during the communion service, talking about things that happen to us and how we handle that and just give it over to God. What I want to do is ask you guys to make this a participative worship service. And I'm not going to ask you to say anything. I'm not even going to ask you to look around, but I want you to raise your hand and keep your hand up if any of these things have applied to you, okay? Has anyone here had a loved one that's passed away? Have any of you lost a relationship that you cherish? Keep them up if this has happened to you. Have you lost a good friend, or maybe even perhaps a marriage? Have you lost your health? If you have, keep your hands raised up. Are you sad if Joe Biden was elected president? Raise your hand. Or would you have been sad, keep your hand up, if Donald Trump would have been re-elected president? Have you lost a job? Has your income gone down? Do you have car problems, or have you ever been in a wreck? Are things not going well on the job? Are others taking credit for the things you do? Is it hard for us to pay the bills? Is business not going well? Is there too much month left at the end of the money? Have your good intentions been misrepresented? Have people said negative things about you falsely? So raise your hand if any of that has happened to you. And I want you to now look around to see how many people have gone through. You can put your hands down now. How many people have gone through? And I venture to say most of us here, if not all of us, have had things happen to us that we don't like, that are not good for us, that we think are not what we want to happen. And in the keeping with the theme, we need to be saved just like the people that we talked about, Jerry's talked about in the scriptures. That is something that we need today like they did back then. Now, some of the storms that we face are of our own doing. They're decisions that we've made. We're not proud of them, but we suffer the consequences of our behavior. And then sometimes things happen to us at someone else's doing. Sometimes things happen to us because it's God's supreme will, and we may not know right now what the purpose of that is. But nevertheless, things do happen to us. And here are the 4 things that Carrie and I did on that story that I told you, okay? Number 1 is, when we suffered these difficult times, the first thing we did was work like it's all up to us and pray like it's all up to God. Now, you have to join those two together, because the first thing that we did when the motors quit running is, do you remember? I raised the sail. And that was important because it was something that I could actually do physically tangibly do. Not sit around and mope about why didn't the chandlery make sure that I had a good motor or blame someone else. The time was to look forward and to do what I could do to change our circumstances. And it's really important for us to know that when, you've heard the expression, right? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. You got to do what you can do to make things the best that they can be. I have a couple of slides here, and I want to add some scriptures to this, okay? Ecclesiastes 3. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Proverbs 13. The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of a diligent is richly supplied. 2 Thessalonians. If anyone isn't willing to work, let him not eat. For we hear that some of you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but busybodies. Now such persons we command and encourage in the Lord Jesus Christ to do the work quietly and to earn their own living. Colossians 3, whatever you do, work heartily as the Lord and not to man. Ephesians chapter 6, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man. So I want you guys to know that when you work is not necessarily for man, but you work for God. Have you ever been stuck in a job where you don't like your boss? Have you ever been in a position where someone takes credit for what you do? Have you ever been in a position where you're like, I'm just going to be lazy. I'm on the clock because no one really cares. That's counter to what God is saying. God is saying work like he's the boss and work as if no one but him is looking. Now, have you ever seen that TV show called What Would You Do with John Quinones? It's a really good show. It's the hidden camera, and they have scenarios set up where people are acting, and then you have innocent bystanders that are listening and watching, and then seeing if they engage in what they do. I love that show. It's kind of fun to watch, and then ask yourself basically, what would you do? And I don't know, this is kind of sad and funny, but whenever I am walking in a grocery store, for example, and I see something out of place or on the ground, or I see a piece of trash, sometimes I'll pick it up. Most of the time I'll put it where it belongs, or I'll do it. And in my mind I keep thinking, well, there's going to be a TV show. This is going to be a hidden camera somewhere, right? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be on TV doing the right thing. Now, you might think that yourself if you were in that situation, because it really does help me. Now, in my life, I've only been rewarded for doing that one time. I don't know if you remember it, Mom, but Jerry and I were playing in the backyard. I don't know, we were mowing the yard or edging or weed eating. I don't know what we were doing, but we were doing some kind of work because Jerome made us work all the time. We were out there, and the next door neighbor, I think his name was Gene Edwards. I can't remember. I think that's right. Gene was the next door neighbor over the fence, and he called Jerry and I to the fence. And he's like, come on over here. And we thought, oh no, what do we do this time? And he said, I want you to know you guys always working and you play well together. I'm just going to give you $20 a piece. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And I never forgot that, because I thought that was pretty awesome, that you get rewarded for something that you do that you don't know anybody's looking. Now, I'll tell a story on Jerry because I know you would want me to do that. When Jerry was right out of Harding, he was a youth minister for the Colony Church of Christ, okay? And I would frequently see him or call him because we lived in Dallas. I called the church building for him one morning at 10 o'clock, and he wasn't there. And I was like, well, that's not like Jerry. And this is back before cell phones, right? I'm like, that's not like Jerry. What's going on? So Jerry called me back. I left a message. Jerry called me back, and I said, what's going on? You weren't at church. It's not like you. He says, well, I rode my bike to church today. I'm like, you rode your bicycle? That's like a 3-mile ride. He goes, yeah. One of the members of the church is in hard times and needed a vehicle, so I loaned him the vehicle. I said, you've got one vehicle. He goes, I know, but I can ride a bike. Man, that's good. That's good. Jerry's really good. There I go again. Can you just scratch the recording, please? Anyway, Jerry didn't do it to be seen. He did it because it was the right thing to do. And we ought to do things because it's the right thing to do. Period. We also need to pray like it's all up to God. And here are some scriptures about prayer. Pray in the Spirit and on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep praying for the Lord's people. James 5, the effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. 1 Thessalonians, pray without ceasing. John 14, whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. Because there's a lot of things that God can do that we may not be able to do on our own, and He's just sitting there waiting for us to ask. We prayed for a strong wind, and He answered us in a mighty way. You know, I hear the story of a young boy playing in the backyard trying to move this big rock out of the way. His father was standing nearby and came up and said, hey, have you tried everything to move that rock? And the son said, yeah. And the father said, I think I can think of one other thing you haven't tried. He goes, what is that? He goes, you haven't asked for my help. Because between the two of us, we can move that big old rock. And so I say that to say there are a lot of things that we can't do on our own, that all we need to do is just ask. And the God in heaven will answer our prayers the way we want it. Now, don't get me wrong. He doesn't always answer the way we want, right? I heard a professor at Harding tell me one time, it's either yes, the answer is yes, and He will answer our prayer, or the answer is no, I will not answer your prayer for my own divine reasons. Or the third one is wait a while. Just wait a while. And I think we need to take whatever His answer is in the good nature that Mario mentioned. It's the Lord's will, and we just need to turn it over to Him. And so work like it's up to you. That doesn't mean don't work, because we turn it over to Him. Work like it's up to us. Pray like it's up to God. That's the first point. The second point I'd like to make is that we need to consider from time to time phoning a friend. You remember the story? I called Mike McKay, and I'm like, Mike, come help me. We need some help. And Mike answered right away, and he came to help. Now, fortunately, we caught that wind before he got there, but he was there ready on the spot. I want to say, as members of the church, all of us that are here, it's great to have this many believers in one city, willing to come to worship every Sunday together. If we need help, there's a good chance somebody else in this building has been through the same thing. And they've made it past with something they've said or done, or a way God answered their prayers, or the way they've become better as a result of it. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Go to a marriage enrichment seminar. Go to a Bible encampment. Attend Bible classes. Read a good book. Watch a good video series. Ask the counsel of an elder. Don't be afraid to phone that friend and get the help that you need in times of need. It doesn't mean we don't pray. It doesn't mean we don't work. But let's see if we can engage the body of believers to help each other out. Now I want to flip that coin over a bit. If you've been through a particularly difficult thing in your life and you've learned from that, then please be that person to go to the other person in need and say, can I listen and share my experiences? Now, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Be sure you listen twice as much as you talk. But you have a wealth of knowledge within you to share with other people. So don't be afraid to not only work, but pray, and then phone a friend. There are some passages of scriptures that I want to address in asking for help. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. When there is no guidance, a people fall. But in an abundance of counseling, there's safety. Listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. And then Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. You mean there's a law about that? Yeah, there's a law that says to bear one another's burdens. So there's a saying that says sharing one another's burdens and loving a brother is like a mathematical equation, right? It multiplies happiness and it divides sorrows. If we can show that brotherly love, it will multiply our joys and divide our sorrows. The third point I'd like to make is be sure every chance you get to follow the map. You remember when the rain came and I could barely see in front of the boat? I didn't know where the land was or Johnson's Reef was or even another boat steaming towards us. I had that GPS. And if it weren't for the GPS, we would be lost. And I want to present to you the fact that the Word of God is our GPS in life. And if we follow the Word of God, we will not get lost. It's so important to know what's ahead of us, what's behind us, what's to the right of us, and what's to the left of us. Some of the scriptures about following the map. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my pathway. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of the sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. And then 2 Timothy chapter 3, all scripture is God-breathed and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness. It's really important for us to know that we have that guide that was written by 40 plus authors writing 66 books over a period of about 1,500 years. There's a lot of wisdom in that. If we just look at the map more often and follow that map, we will safely reach our destination. My mom gave each of his kids, my mom and dad gave each of his kids a Bible. I don't remember whether it was when we turned teenagers or when we were baptized, but I remember getting that blue Bible, and in it they wrote an inscription about following the Lord's will and his map. I read a story about a boy who his father gave him a Bible, and here's what it said. The book is a roadmap to heaven. Live by these words and you'll never stray from the path. Ignore these words and you'll wander far away from God's plan for your life. Even better, get to know the author of the book. He will travel with you. Look for him. Listen to him. The one who wrote this book is the one who loves you the most. I thought that was really good. So my points are, do your best, work like it's all up to you, pray like it's all up to God, and then follow that map. And the last point I'd like to make is hold tight to the anchor. When Carrie and I got into that harbor and grabbed a hold of that anchor, wow, we were happy. We knew that no matter what the storms would be, no matter how strong the wind blew, and no matter who huffed and puffed and blew the house down, we were going to be okay. And that was a good feeling. I know that it's important for us to know that we need to take heart and not be afraid and hold on to that faith. Hold on to that anchor. Matthew chapter 14, you remember the apostles were in the sailboat and the winds were blowing and the storms were coming in, and Jesus appeared on the water. And Jesus said to them, like he's saying to us now, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Because he's been through what we've been through, and he is there to give us that anchor that we need to calm the storm, the calm after the storm, and make our life a lot more solid and stable. When we go through difficult times, we've known people that have lost their faith. I challenge you to hang on to it. We know people who've left the church. Hang on to it. We know people who've left relationships. Hang on to them. Because you never know that what that challenge is in your life is to make you more precious than gold. You know, the scriptures teach us that gold is refined with fire. Have you thought about that? It's like we need the fire in order for us to become more like refined gold. And if we haven't been through it, it's harder for us to understand and to feel the beauty of coming out the other side. Arsenio Hall is a comedian. He was doing a parody on TV evangelist. And I know you guys have been studying the rescue with the patriarchs and matriarchs of old. Arsenio Hall, Jerry and I laugh about this. I don't think he meant it to be sacrilegious, but he was trying to relate to the people that were in the audience. And it reminded me of the series that you've gone through. He said something like this in his preacher's voice. He said, "God help Noah be saved from the flood." He said, "God help Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they were thrown into the fiery furnace. God help Joseph when his brothers sold him into slavery." And then he said, "God help Gilligan get off that island." And I thought, boy, people don't know the word, do they? They don't know the scriptures very well. That's not actually in the Bible. But he was trying to make a point, and that was God has helped people in years past and throughout the years, thousands of years. And he's here to help you today. We sang some scriptures that I want to put on the board, and some of those we sang today. And think about it, we sing these all the time, but we don't think them in terms of sailing a ship and the anchor and the experiences that we went through. If dangers threaten, if storms of trial burst above my head, if lashing seas leap everywhere about me, they can't harm me or make my heart afraid. We have an anchor. We have an anchor that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll. What is the rest of it? Will your anchor hold in the storms of life? Count your blessings. When upon life's billows you are in the tempest tossed, when you're discouraged thinking all is lost, count your blessings. Name them one by one. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Bear me safely through the swelling current and land on Canaan's side. And then, precious Lord, lead me on. It says, let me stand. I'm tired, I'm weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on. Through the light, take my hand. Precious Lord, lead me home. And then the last one is Love Lifted Me, which I think is our song of invitation. Yeah, no, Be With Me, Lord is. But Love Lifted Me says, souls in danger, look above. Jesus completely saves. He will lift you by his love out of the angry waves. He's the master of the sea, billows, his will obey. He, your Savior, wants to be saved today. So I want to end my story by showing you a picture of us in the harbor. And the way that story ended was when we were on that mooring ball, we put all of our put the possessions that we needed into a trash bag, put them on a life vest, and swam to shore 400 yards, not 400 miles. That would have been bad. 400 yards. And we hitchhiked to town. The next morning, I went to the mechanic shop, got a filter, which was the problem, and took our dinghy out to the boat. Within 30 minutes, the boat was fixed. And now we're safely on the harbor. The boat was fixed. We were now safe and secure. And I want to say to you that maybe there are lessons to be learned in that, and maybe you have your own stories to tell. But for us, it helped us to work like it was all up to God, to pray, to work like it's all up to us, pray like it's all up to God, and not be afraid to ask for help, to follow that GPS map, and then to put our faith in the Lord and hang on to that anchor when you get it. And don't lose your faith, but let it strengthen your faith. I have a lot more stories to tell about Jerry. So if you want to see me after service today, I'm going to share as many as you want me to. But I will tell you this. If there are good stories about Jerry, they're perfectly honest and true. If there are bad stories about Jerry, I probably did it. And Mom blamed Jerry. The invitation is yours. If you've not obeyed the gospel yet, it's important to know to start with baptism and belief in Him and live a faithful life. And if you've been baptized, but you find yourself in a position where you need prayers and you need strength, there are many here that are willing to come to your aid and put yourself in God's care. Give it up to God and give your life completely to Him to help us make it through those storms in your life. If you're subject to the invitation, please come to the front. Let's all together stand and sing.
Be with me, Lord, I cannot live without Thee. I dare not try to take one step alone.